Maybe the biggest takeaway from Warhol is this embrace culturally of the idea of reproduction, aesthetically. In the copy, the essential qualities of the work are transferred to a new object. Remember Iggy Pop's song Mass Production of 77, The Idiot? The lyrics: before you go, do me a favor, give me a number of a girl almost like you, with legs almost like you. I'm buried deep in mass production, you're not nothing new. I like to drive along the freeways, see the smokestacks belching, breasts turned brown, so warm and so brown. Iggy embraces the idea of a recreation, a representation. He prefers the objectified female to the human female. He is a post-war baby. Warhol adored the so-called superficial. Warhol claimed that everything his critics said about him was utterly true, while his muscle to charm may have assisted him most in pioneering conceptual art at the dawn of the 20th century. To his potential or undeniable chagrin, Warhol is the 20th century artist, except for perhaps Picasso, but even then maybe, whom if they never existed, the world would be a markedly different place. That is the significance of Warhol, more than his skill as a craftsman or his technical finesse as an occasional filmmaker, or even his influence in popularizing informal works of fine art. Warhol's fame dissolved for distinctions between fine and commercial visual art. Warhol himself and the idea of Warhol, his thesis, effectively was the art's gravity, or even the art itself, and his works were essentially manifestations of this idea over and over again, all eloquently, informatively outlined in Chuck Workman's 1990 documentary Superstar. Superstar, released only some years after Warhol's tragic passing, is the definitive text for understanding, from an educational perspective, who Warhol was, the significance of his art, how he shifted the discourse of the art dimension, and why now in 2024 a lot of his influence is so ubiquitous as to be invisible. In 1990, a more grounded, less digital, and more analog, old-school environment to ours, his influence was then also ever apparent. By one minor issue, maybe more than just minor, in this Chuck Workman film, I feel as though Warhol's contributions to cinema were reduced to novelty amusement on his part, rather than serious, bold explorations of the medium's frontiers. Warhol was like James Benning powered by a nuclear reactor and had the same cataclysmic yet existentially revolutionary ramifications. James Benning gets dismissed enough by non-serious participants in the discourses on film. Warhol is even more effectively a meme. Yes, the likes of Empire, Sleep, Blowjob, Kiss are often mocked and derided as generating certain pretentious discussions and poses and all of that, Emperor's New Clothes, blah blah blah. But films like this needed to exist in order to demonstrate the margins of this medium. A film like Empire is a valid psychological exercise and arguably, or just inarguably, one of the finest tools ever composed to measure the subjective experience of time, contrasting a viewer's internal conflicts with the inanimate serenity of this anthropogenic landmark, humanity's own answer to the eternal mountains. Warhol's films, those initial few, the most infamous and plausibly the most discussed, and maybe even the most acclaimed overall, they aren't classic films in the traditional respect. Sleep, Empire in particular, Blowjob as well. Kiss as a feature, versus the short film variant, there's two versions of it, is one of the most unpretentiously optimistic works of art in human history. It might never be surpassed. Kiss is the best of that batch, I would argue, actually. They aren't classic, and that might be a classic film in this respect. Typically they aren't classic films in that you pop them on to rewatch, or they constantly stick in your mind, impressing you, making you envious or in awe of it. Kiss as a feature might be like that is a kind of glorious idea. I think a really beautiful idea, honestly. Rather, they were the equivalent of technological scientific innovations, except that these were psychological artistic discoveries, illuminating things which we as viewers of films took thoroughly for granted, I feel. To me, the function of those Warhol features is obvious. Their fundamental goal is reorientation and using the bare minimum of the medium in order to generate the most profound existential results. A viewing of Empire would objectively be a highly memorable, unforgettable film experience. This is simply indisputable, whether the experience is positive or thoroughly negative. James Benning said he felt as though the film medium moved too quickly historically and didn't explore the potential depth of one single moving image, one single take. Perhaps he was an admirer of Warhol cinema, or it would surprise next to no one. Warhol would have, I imagine, considered Empire in the "why don't I do that" category. It is almost as if the traditional answers as to why, or the future answers, the refined answers as to why, is what he was searching for when embarking upon features such as the highly infamous Empire. Anyone wanting to learn about one of the most consequential Americans or humans of the 20th century, I can't imagine a more reliable means to do so than by viewing Superstar, unless I happen to view another work which succeeds it in my estimation. If I've gotten Warhol wrong here, please do let me know. I'm not interested in anyone who dismisses discussion of the man as Emperor's New Clothes. The implications of his work just frighten you too much, silly square. But if someone is a professed enthusiast of Warhol or the arts world in general, and they feel as though I have spouted some dismal claptrap, please let me know. Let's learn. Let's find out more. Together. It will be so grand. Is this the beginning of Warhol Week? Somewhat. We'll be discussing some documentary features related to Warhol rather than Warhol's feature film work itself, because sometimes these are finer distillations for understanding the fellow, or at least they ground one's own potentially horrifying or inept considerations of his art. Thank you, everyone. Stay well, enjoy the future which he very accurately predicted, and make the most of your designated turn at those 15 minutes.